Okay, imagine this. You've got a tiny, exhausted, parched group of people standing dead in their tracks against an absolutely massive army. Thousands of soldiers. They're completely surrounded, handed a brutal ultimatum, and yet, they don't even blink. They absolutely refuse to bow down. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the Epic of Karbala.
Now, it's a question historians have literally spent centuries agonizing over. How exactly does a small band of just 72 loyal individuals look an entire empire in the eye, defy it, and completely alter the course of history? Well, today we are breaking down the story of Imam Hussein's ultimate sacrifice. And look, this isn't just some dusty recount of an ancient battle. It is a timeless, profound lesson in resisting tyranny and standing up for justice when the odds are, frankly, impossible.
Part 1. The Succession Conflict, a Shift in Leadership.
So, setting the stage here, after the passing of Prophet Muhammad, the Muslim world went through a massive, seismic shift in leadership. Power eventually landed in the hands of Yazid, which was a huge deal because it marked the first real attempt to turn the caliphate into a hereditary monarchy. And the historical accounts paint a pretty grim picture of Yazid's rule: indulgent, corrupt, flat-out tyrannical. Enter Imam Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. For him, accepting Yazid wasn't just some political inconvenience, it was a fundamental, absolute clash of Islamic values. He just couldn't stomach a leadership rooted in oppression that had drifted so incredibly far from established teachings.
And, this unrest wasn't happening in a vacuum. Down in Kufa, which is in present-day Iraq, the people were suffering big time. They started firing off letters to Imam Hussein. We're talking thousands of letters. Desperate pleas saying, "Come, save us from Yazid's tyranny. We'll make you our leader." So Hussein responds. He sends his most trusted envoy, Muslim bin Aqil, to scope things out. At first, huge local support. It looked really promising. But then Yazid's army cracked down hard, and the tide turned brutally, ending in Muslim bin Aqil's tragic martyrdom.
Part 2. Journey to Karbala, a stand for justice.
While everything was falling apart in Kufa, Imam Hussein was in Mecca, facing this intense, crushing pressure to pledge his allegiance to Yazid. But he famously refused. He laid it all out, declaring he was stepping forward to defend Islam, not to just roll over and accept corruption. So he leaves Mecca with his family, and the journey is just harrowing. On the road, they get the devastating news about his envoy, Muslim bin Aqil. And honestly, this is the turning point where a lot of the opportunistic folks who had tagged along suddenly dropped off. Only the absolute most loyal companions and family members stayed. Together, this tiny group arrived at the plains of Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram in the year 61 AH.
Part 3. The Siege and Thirst, Surrounded at the Euphrates.
So they set up camp right on the banks of the Euphrates River, but they quickly realize they are completely boxed in, surrounded. The grand total of loyal companions, family and friends who actually stayed by Imam Hussein's side, exactly 72 people.
Now, to put that into perspective, the army opposing them, commanded by Umar bin Saad, was massive. Historians estimate this force was anywhere from 4,000 to a staggering 30,000 soldiers. Just let that sink in. 72 against thousands. The sheer disparity is honestly mind-boggling. You really have to marvel at the unbelievable, unshakable courage it took for those 72 individuals to just hold their ground and not immediately flee into the desert.
And the tactics used against this tiny group were just agonizingly cruel. On the 7th of Muharram, the opposing army entirely blocked off their access to the river. A searing, desert thirst ripped through the camp, and it spared literally no one. It hit the elders, the women, and, in one of the most heartbreaking details, Hussein's 6-month-old son, Abdullah. Even amidst all this horrific suffering, Hussein tried to open a dialogue. But the army's response? A cold, final ultimatum. Pledge loyalty to Yazid or die. And even while watching his own family suffer, Imam Hussein didn't waver. He firmly repeated that he would never, ever bow down to corruption.
Part 4. The Day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram.
The morning of Friday, the 10th of Muharram, actually started off peacefully, with Imam Hussein leading his small camp in morning prayer. But, the inevitable battle broke out soon after. And the people who sacrificed everything that day, they weren't just nameless soldiers. There was Hazrat Abbas, Hussein's incredibly brave brother and the flag bearer, who was martyred just trying to get some water for the thirsty camp. There was Ali Akbar, his eldest son, and Qasim, his young nephew. But maybe the most fascinating story here is Hur. Hur was actually a high-ranking commander in Yazid's own army. But right there on the battlefield, he realized the massive injustice taking place, and he defected. He literally crossed enemy lines to stand, fight, and ultimately die for the truth.
One by one, those 72 loyal companions fell. Eventually, Imam Hussein, who was around 57 or 58 years old at the time, was left completely, utterly alone on the battlefield. Despite suffering from severe thirst and just countless wounds, the accounts say he fought with immense, unimaginable bravery. Ultimately, he attained martyrdom, and in a final act of sheer brutality, he was beheaded by the opposing forces.
Part 5. The Enduring Legacy, Captives of Damascus.
In the immediate aftermath of the battle, Hussein's camp was torched, and the surviving women and children were forced to march all the way to Damascus as captives. But if Yazid thought doing this would finally silence them, well, he was entirely wrong. Standing right there as a captive in Yazid's own court, Hussein's sister Hazrat Zainab bint Ali showed absolute fearless defiance. She declared, "You cannot defeat us. Our martyrdom will awaken the world." And she was exactly right. It was Zainab and those surviving captives who raised their voices and made absolutely sure that the true story of Karbala wouldn't just be buried in the sand. They essentially took a devastating military defeat and flipped it into a permanent moral victory.
So, what does this all mean for us today? Ultimately, Karbala was never just a physical battle over land or politics. It was the absolute, ultimate clash between haq, truth, and batil, falsehood. It established this incredibly powerful, timeless principle. Submitting to tyranny and oppression is never the right answer, even when you are overwhelmingly outnumbered. Imam Hussein literally sacrificed his life, his family, and his closest friends to protect the core, foundational values of his faith.
And centuries later, the tragedy of Karbala is still honored globally by millions of people every single Muharram. It acts as this stark, constant historical reminder that every single era has its oppressors, and every era desperately needs people who are willing to resist. So, it leaves us with a pretty heavy question. If the ultimate test of truth and justice came knocking tomorrow, would you have the courage to stand with the 72? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you.